Hello, my name is Nakia Rhodes, and today I'd like to highlight a faith based organization that has played a critical role in disaster response for generations. The African Methodist Episcopal Church, also known as the AME Church, with more than 2.7 million members and over 7,000 congregations, it is one of the oldest and most influential historically Black denominations in the United States. The AME Church has not only been a spiritual home, but also a social and humanitarian leader, especially in times of crisis. So, who are they and how are they organized for disasters? The AME Church coordinates daily work through multiple ministry commissions. The International Health Commission partners with agencies like FEMA and the American Red Cross to strengthen preparedness and community response across the U.S. And another branch, the AME Service and Development Agency, often called AME SADA, runs humanitarian programs around the world, particularly in Haiti, South Africa. At the regional level, AME Episcopal districts plug into state and local VOAD networks, ensuring that their congregations are directly involved in collaborative disaster relief. This multi level structure means that AME is positioned to respond locally, nationally, and globally when disasters occur. So, what does AME specialize in during disasters, you may ask? Well, when disasters strike, AME congregations often become community hubs. Churches open their doors as safe spaces, shelters, and staging grounds for food and supply distribution. Volunteers step in to help families secure temporary housing, connect with medical care, and find clothing or other hygiene essentials. Beyond the physical, AME pastors and lay leaders emphasize emotional and spiritual care, sitting with survivors, praying with families, and providing grief and support and trauma counseling is some of the things that AME does during crises. Meanwhile, AME SADA, the more international organization, adds a public health and medical capacity, coordinating clinics and mobile health services in places where infrastructure has been destroyed. This blend of tangible relief and compassionate presence is a hallmark of AME's response. Some concrete examples of what the AME does is during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. As the levees broke in New Orleans and residents were forced to evacuate quickly from their homes, AME congregations across the Gulf stepped in. Local churches became makeshift shelters, kitchens, and relief distribution points. At the same time, congregations from states like Texas, Mississippi, and others sent caravans of food, bottled water, and bedding to the hardest hit neighborhoods. What impressed me most was how the AME networks mobilized at multiple levels. The National Disaster Relief Commission coordinated resources, bishops arranged housing for evacuees, and local pastors rallied volunteers. They didn't just address physical needs, they also brought in volunteer nurses, counselors, and chaplains for the deep emotional and spiritual wounds that were left by the disaster. This layered response allowed the AME Church to meet urgent survival needs as well as fostering long term healing for families and communities affected. An interesting fact that stood out to me about AME is that I discovered that AME Church has a kind of two-lane capacity. On one hand, it organized neighborhood relief in the US. like the response they had in Katrina. On the other hand, through AME SADA, it runs long-standing development and health programs in places like Haiti. That means the AME Church is equally prepared to handle immediate disaster response and the longer-term rebuilding and recovery process. Few organizations can pivot so seamlessly between local relief and global humanitarian efforts. So, let's talk about NVOAD and how it provides emotional and spiritual care. I want to highlight something that I learned about the National VOAD, which is the network of voluntary organizations, including the AME Church, that coordinates disasters. One of the most important contributions is emotional and spiritual care, often called ESC. VOAD has national standards that emphasize dignity, inclusiveness, and respect for religious diversities, which I found very fascinating in a time of people grouping together and trying to be separate. VOAD also integrates faith leaders into the broader emergency response system. For example, appointing a faith community representative in incident command structures who help connect responders with the resources and needs of local faith communities. A helpful resource here is VOAD's guide called Light Our Way, which provides practical tools for offering safe and ethical emotional and spiritual support in disaster contexts. If you want to learn more about the AME's church disaster response, or perhaps help, volunteer, or donate, you can visit their official website at https double dot wwe.ame-church.com, or explore AME's SADA's work at ame-sada.org. To learn more about emotional and spiritual care and other resources on the VOAD, visit www.nvoad.org. I want to thank everyone for listening to this presentation. I hope that you learned a lot about how to connect to disaster resources and also how to possibly connect others to those resources. Thank you and have a great day.